Hi, it's Rachel. We God is calling us into the kingdom of heaven. And that's what I want to talk about in this video because it's so important for us to understand where we're headed because that affects the decisions and what we do today. Okay, so I was reading in this morning in Revelation 21, and that's talking about the new heaven and the new earth. Okay, so I want to go through some of this because this is what is coming upon the earth, but because the kingdom of heaven comes within, we're a part of bringing that here. And it is by our understanding of what it is, thus our choices and the foundations that we're building in our life that actually enable us to be a part of that new kingdom. Okay, so in Revelation 21, it says, "Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. There was no more sea." And the sea is referring to the darkness. The sea is full of, it's dark. When you go into the sea, it's very dark under there, okay? And there's a lot of creatures that are in the sea in darkness. So it's the waters full of darkness. We're water, so it's representing those waters where the hidden things are, is full of darkness, okay? So in this new heavens and new earth, there's not going to be any more darkness, okay? That's passing away. Everything's going to be revealed. And that's why I was sharing about the revealing of our hearts, okay, and the testing of our hearts. Okay, so that's exposing all that is in the sea. All right, so then in verse 2 it says, "Then I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband." Now, this holy city, the New Jerusalem, is the new way in which we, the souls of mankind, operate. Okay, we're no longer operating by the laws of unrighteousness and the ways of unrighteousness, okay, but we're operating by the ways of righteousness and truth. And that is ultimately what that whole city is about, but I'll go into that a little bit deeper. But what's interesting about coming down from heaven is that this reminded me of when in Exodus 24:25, when Moses went up to receive the plans of the new tabernacle and the new ways, the new systems, the new processes, the new ways that people were going to function under God's reign, okay, under what he wanted. And so that came to Moses when he was on the mountain, okay, and that mountain for us is Mount Zion. So when we go and we have built our lives on the truths of God, okay, and so we come to this point where on that mountain, then we start understanding and start receiving the new ways of how God's going to be working in this earth, the new structures, the new plans. Okay, that's very similar. And the thing is that why it's prepared as a bride is because when we are functioning as humans, okay, morphing into spiritual beings, when we are functioning on a foundation of truths of God, then we are ready. We are like the bride that now God can come and abide with because we've been sanctified. Okay, it's a sanctified, it's a pure way of operating in this creation. We are a part of God's creation. We're always going to be a part of creation, but right now the creation is, its foundations are crumbling. And you see that when you look around, there's a lot of things happening in our world. Those foundations are crumbling because new foundations are coming. And that's what this whole time is about this kingdom of heaven coming, as those new foundations are being established. okay? And are those foundations built of that create harmony and peace and kindness and honor and love. These are the ways that God operates, okay? The foundations in which He builds upon, that we also with Him build upon in our lives by the choices that we make, the decisions that we make. So then in verse 3, okay, and I heard a loud voice from heaven saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and He will dwell with them, and they shall be His people. God Himself will be with them and be their God. It's establishing that sovereign reign of God over us. And how He does that is by telling us, teaching us by His wisdom, by His understanding, when we're on Mount Zion, seeking His face, how do we operate in this world? What are the new systems? What are the new structures that are going to be built that perpetuate the things of God and perpetuate righteousness, okay, and goodness, and not evil or lawlessness? In verse 4, it says, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, no more sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. And this is those who are going to be a part of this new system of God, okay, operating by His laws, the way He functions, His wisdom. You're not doing anything that's related to death and sorrow and crying and pain, okay? Those aren't a part of His kingdom. And so that's why the things that we shouldn't be doing anything in our life that is feeding those things, okay, as much as we're able, because again, this world's full of darkness. So it's everywhere. But that's why we're supposed to be coming out of those ways of being, the ways of the world that cause death and cruelty and suffering and harm and pain. Okay, the ways that we operate in our own life, the choices that we make in our relationships and to ourselves and to others, that we're doing the things that are actually in relation to the kingdom of heaven and not the kingdom of darkness. Okay, so now there's a choice to be made about which kingdom we're being a part of, because it's one kingdom is coming in and another is passing away. So it's which one are you a part of? And that's what I've been talking a lot about in these videos. And in verse 5, it says, then He who sat on the throne said, behold, I'll make all things new. Okay? So that's where we should be seeking God. In my life, how do I walk according to your wisdom in your ways, and be willing to let go of everything that's counter to that? And that's well, I'll get into that in a minute, okay? Because that's very important, and that's the choice that we're having to make. Okay, are we willing to sell all for Him, which is His ways? That means letting go of everything that's not of Him. Okay, it doesn't mean, are you willing to sell all your possessions? Literally, okay? A lot of times, religion and churches and denominations have turned that so that they think, well, as a follower of God, you shouldn't have basically anything. You should, live at a bare minimum. And so they interpret those verses as that's what sell all. Sell all is talking about what's contrary to God. Okay, because God blesses those. If you're faithful little, He gives you more. So it's not about what you have, it's what foundation are those things built upon. Okay, and so you've got to sell everything that's counter to the wisdom and ways of God. Okay, so then He said, then He who sat on the throne said, behold, I will make all things new. He said to me, write, for these words are true and faithful. He said to me, it is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give the fountain of water of life freely to him who thirsts. This is the thirsting. This is the choice, okay? And a lot that happens in Revelation is to bring people to repentance, which is to thirst for something different than what they've been feeding on. Instead of the lust of the flesh, you're now thirsting for righteousness in the ways of God. So if you truly desire that, so you're trying to practice the ways of righteousness, walk in the ways of truth, walk in the ways of loving kindness, that means you're thirsting for it and you will be given it. But if you're not and you're clinging on to these things, you're not thirsting, okay? And that's what he gets down to in a couple of verses. So again, there's this element of choice that we come to. And this goes into is that just like Esau, who sold his birthright for a morsel of food, okay? With this, I want to paint this picture of what God's showing me about this coming kingdom in this reality and what that looks like, because we don't want to be ones that sell the entrance into this kingdom for a little lust that's a fleeting lust, okay, that satisfies for a moment, but in its end it leads to our destruction and our poverty of spirit and of our life, okay? And that's what that means, is that sometimes when we don't understand where we're supposed to be headed and the path that gets us there, we sell our whole birthright, the ability to come into the kingdom of heaven now, for a lust, for a morsel of food. And sometimes that's literally, okay, as I've been talking about in my past videos, but that's basically choosing a lust and to satisfy that of this world, okay, lust of the flesh, a lust of the eyes, the pride of life, versus that taking in and desiring the pure loving kindness of God and choosing that instead. All right, so this is where in verse 7 it says, he who overcomes shall inherit all things. I will be his God and he shall be my son. It's the ability to overcome the temptation, the pull of the world, the lust of the world, the ways of the world. That's what you're overcoming. Okay, so that you are, and when we do, that's what you start gaining, because when you don't embrace those things, you're turning into the things of God. And when you start walking on that path, your end is that you shall inherit all things, because you'll be made a son of God, a daughter of God. Okay, and when he's your father, all that is his is yours. In verse 8 it says, but the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Okay, this is that refinement. That's what the lake of fire is. God's consuming fire. The fire is an eternal burning fire because it burns away all that's not of God, to purify, to sanctify. Okay, it is a purification. And that's why it keeps burning and never stops, because as long as there's fuel for the fire, and that is the things contrary to God is fuel for the fire, it keeps burning. But that's what it is those people are going to be in that refinement, okay? And you can't come into the kingdom of heaven if you're holding on to those things, because corruption can't enter in. Because we just read that in the kingdom there's no more death. There's no more sorrow, crying, pain. So if you're doing the things that are creating that and holding on to those, you can't enter in. Okay, so you see that distinction there. Okay, so then in verse 9, he goes on to say, then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls filled with the 7 last plagues came to me and talked with me, saying, come, I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. And remember, I mentioned this verse a while ago when I was talking about the trumpets, okay? The bowls are going to be poured out, is that is part of that refinement that is going to be happening to purify, to sanctify, okay? As those ways of unrighteousness and things contrary to God are no longer going to work, but they're going to actually turn on people. And that will be part of that purification, Okay, is the very things that you're feeding and lusting after are going to turn on you and start causing harm. Okay, the stings, the pains, the sores, the issues, so that you'll repent from them. Because right now they're not causing that to people, so they're not repenting. And sometimes they are, it's just that causing that, but people still aren't repenting. Okay, so it's like it will get hotter and hotter and more intense and keep burning. That fire, that refinement. That's what it's talking about. So, all right, so this bride, again, that's what I was talking about in that the beginning. So we're going to see a little bit more detail about what that entails, and I'll dive into that in my next video.